Google has a lot of tech, and with that, a lot of tech they've put an end to. So much so that there is Killed by Google, the Google Graveyard, a list of just most, if not everything, that I'm sure there's things that have been killed that we don't even publicly know about that has been ended by Google. And sometimes, because of their browser monopoly, they try to kill off things that they don't actually own. The problem with that, though, is sometimes the embers live on, sometimes you don't have the ability to actually end it. A prime example being JPEG XL. And now that they can't end it, well, it's time to change gears, and you know what? We actually don't hate JPEG XL, let's actually do it. This happened a couple of days ago, and we will get to this, but I feel like it's been enough years at this point that surely some people don't know how we got here. Some people may not even know what JPEG XL is, and why anybody actually cares about it. So the best place to go to actually understand what it is going to jpeg.org and going to the section on JPEG XL. Basically, it's a royalty-free raster graphics image format supporting both lossy and lossless compression. It's aiming to fill the role of both JPEG and PNG on the web because it is actually a lot more efficient than both of these solutions, and converting a JPEG into a lossless JPEG XL actually results in a smaller image, and because you're doing it in a lossless way, with no loss in quality. And it supports very fun modern features like HDR, which obviously you want to be there, but very importantly for the web, progressive decoding. So you can download a small version of the image and you'll see the image, and then as it loads in more, it raises the quality of it. If you want a really good video about JPEG XL and why people actually care, I'll leave this video linked down below. JPEG is dying, and that's a bad thing by 2 Clicks Philip. It goes into what JPEG is, it goes into JPEG XL, and its direct competitor, AVIF. Now remember AVIF, because that's going to be very important to the story today. This was posted about a year ago, and was, well after the attempted killing of JPEG XL by Google. When people talk about Google and JPEG XL, they usually point directly to this thread: JPEG XL decoding support, image/JXL in blink tracking bug. This was the overall tracking bug for implementing JPEG XL, for dealing with JPEG XL bugs, and generally just getting it into a state where it's actually usable. And this was opened on February 13th, 2021. If you want a relatively good explanation on what JPEG XL is, this is also a pretty good one as well. Basically, at this point, a lot of people were saying this is going to be the future of how we handle images on the web. And this isn't like a let's say, WebP situation, where it was this weird other format that people didn't really understand. It didn't really have that much support initially. WebP exists on the web now, but it's still something a lot of people actively don't like. This is something where it was basically just a JPEG, just a bit better. And in this thread, there was a lot of excitement about making this happen. A lot of excitement, not just from users, there were definitely users as well, but industry partners. Industry partners of really big platforms. Here we have a Meta email. This is a Facebook employee. Just want to chime in and mention that us at Facebook are eagerly awaiting full JPEG XL support in Chrome. We are very excited about the potential of JPEG XL, and once decoding support is available, without the need to use a flag to enable the feature on browser start, we are planning to start experiment serving JPEG XL images to users on desktop web. The benefit of smaller file size and or higher quality can be a great benefit to our users. On our end, this is part of a larger initiative to trial JPEG XL on mobile in our native iOS and Android apps as well as desktop. But Facebook, they're just some small indie company. Who really cares what their opinion on a format is? What about other companies? I would like to add support from Adobe on adoption of JPEG XL into Blink/Chromium. JXL is a great advancement in raster imaging, and we look forward to being able to offer support for content authoring and editing in JPEG XL to our customers. Here we have a Cloudinary employee chiming in, explaining why they like JPEG XL. This is a big web CDN distribution platform. They're doing AI stuff now. I don't really care about that. Basically, they offer a lot of various back-end web-related things. At the time, they were employed here, but it appears now they may not be. Not too sure. I am writing to the Chrome team to request full support, not behind a config flag, for JPEG XL in Chrome. I am an engineer on Photoshop, Camera Raw, and Lightroom teams at Adobe developing algorithms for image processing. My team has been exploring HDR displays and workflows for still photos, and I believe that JPEG XL is currently the best available codec for broad distribution and consumption of HDR still photos. I've done several comparisons with AVIF and prefer JPEG XL because of its higher versatility and faster encode speed. And around this time, Adobe even began recommending the use of JPEG XL for sharing camera raws. This is something that Adobe really felt was a good direction for the industry to go. I represent Intel for external partner engagement and standards development for HDR. Intel started support for HDR in January of 2017. We have shipped in the range of 1 billion CPUs and GPUs with HDR support, so we are very keen supporters of HDR for still image photography. Blah blah blah, don't really care. JPEG XL appears to be the only format with suitable compression for images on the web, 16-bit per color channel, and support for the color gamut widely used for DSLR and MLC photographers, e.g. ProPhoto and other wide color gamuts capable of representing the color range captured by cameras. Beyond the critical requirements, JPEG XL also supports other highly important features, lossless compression options for archival usage, progressive image download for efficient web display, and based on other research, appears to have class-leading compression rates and superior image quality at the compression rates typically used for still images. No other formats provide all of these important features for still images. And we also had a Critter dev chime in. This format, along with AVIF, are the only two that could possibly support HDR in consumer environments, but from a development point of view, JXL makes it far easier to do ICC color management. Additionally, while I expect a greater focus will be placed in the photography features of JXL, we also support importing and exporting animations, which some users may find more useful. Right, that's another thing that JPEG XL also supports. Animations. And like Meta, here is another on the consumer side rather than the production side. The Guardian. That news outlet that's relatively popular. They also support the use of JPEG XL because if you're distributing content on the web, you don't want to have to deal with paying your CDN more to have to distribute your image content. And here is someone from FFmpeg. I am the author of FFmpeg's libjxl wrapper that adds JPEG XL support to libav codec. I can also confirm that a native libav codec JPEG XL decoder is directly on the to-do list. Speaking from a technical standpoint, JPEG XL handles alpha, that being transparency, significantly better from a decoder perspective than AVIF, its closest competitor, which requires a separate decoder context to be initialized. It might not matter if the decoding process is entirely abstracted away, but it can create extra overhead for decoding AVIF files that contain alpha channels, something JPEG XL does not have to worry about. JPEG XL also makes color management much simpler than existing formats like WebP or PNG, and legacy JPEG's color management is not as widely supported as the spec provides. Plus, backwards compatibility with legacy JPEG makes it significantly easier for CDNs or even average users to batch convert legacy JPEGs to JPEG XL, with the primary limiting factor being browser support, as most other applications support JPEG XL, including GIMP, Critter, FFmpeg, and a whole bunch of others. So during this time, a lot of things were falling into place. This seemed like the direction the entire industry was going. There was a lot of industry support behind it. It wasn't just something where a couple of open source projects were doing it. This is something where Adobe, Facebook, FFmpeg, which is the backing for so many other things, and a bunch of other projects either supported it or were directly saying this would make what we're doing better. And a bit later on, Shopify even added support for JPEG XL to their platform. Obviously, it's still behind a option in Chrome, so basically no one was using it, but they already had support in the platform. So it seemed very weird when this happened. When this change just appeared out of nowhere, removing the flag, but not enabling the feature, removing the ability to use JPEG XL in Chromium. And with the industry support, people were obviously very confused by this. Why would this be happening? This doesn't make any sense. With a Chromium dev saying after the fact, "Thank you everyone for your comments and feedback regarding JPEG XL. We will be removing JPEG XL code and flag from Chromium for the following reasons. Experimental flags and code should not remain indefinitely." Okay, I agree. The experimental flag shouldn't remain indefinitely. Improve the code, make it not experimental. There is not enough interest from the entire ecosystem to continue experimenting with JPEG XL. Keep in mind, this is after Adobe has support in their entire suite, Facebook wants to use it, Adobe is recommending it for camera raws, a bunch of CDNs want to use it, Shopify has support, a bunch of open source projects have support, including FFmpeg, which is the backing for so many other projects. There is no world where it can have more ecosystem support than by Chrome going and supporting it. That is basically the only major thing left at this point. The new image format does not bring sufficient incremental benefits over existing formats to warrant enabling it by default. This right here is why a lot of people are suggesting it had to do with AVIF, which is a format that Google was very involved in pushing because that is the image component to AV1. And Google is very interested in doing AV1. By removing the flag and the code in M110, it reduces the maintenance burden and allows us to focus on improving existing formats in Chrome. Again, that being AVIF. And yes, removing a format that everybody wanted to see supported would reduce maintenance burden. But it's for a feature that people wanted. Obviously, they never confirmed the reason why they did this is because they're trying to kill competition for AVIF. There's just a lot of things that happen to line up around about the same time, because obviously, the lack of ecosystem support is a lie. Like, this is just an obvious lie that anybody reading this thread, which this Chromium dev could have read the thread, would know is a lie. Do you realize the consequences of removing JPEG XL in Chrome? It will not move other companies such people to use WebP, AVIF, HEIF, otherwise they already would be doing so. They will still be using JPEG, and that is basically the state that we're still in. Yeah, of course, you have some WebP stuff floating around. There's a few little bits of adoption of AVIF. We don't even talk about this one. But the majority of stuff on the web is still JPEG and PNG. Please let the community decide which format will be used, because they already had patches in Chrome, right? They decided to remove the patches. It is really sad to see how other companies and software are adding support for JPEG XL, and only Chromium wants to remove it without any good reasons, provided reasons are not valid, or I would rather say are lies. I'm just going to say it as a lie because it is literally in the thread you're reading. There is no way they are not aware of all of the industry support for it. I still believe, and I hope that I'm not alone, that the JPEG XL is the best replacement for JPEG, PNG, and GIF. When all this was going on, there is one thing I did appreciate. They didn't lock the comments. They let people tell them, you are stupid. This is a bad idea. You should implement support for this, and just let them do it. I wish more open source projects were like this. Whilst Google tried to stamp it out, they didn't succeed in doing so. It left some embers, and people kept working on things. Progress was being made. In 2022, we had the addition of support in WebKit GTK. Yeah, it's WebKit GTK. No one uses it. It doesn't really matter, but it's something. In 2023, people noticed support was being worked on in the Apple ecosystem for Safari. That is a much bigger deal. Then somebody realized that OS-level support for JPEG XL was being added into Windows. And in 2024, somebody outlined all of this. And it wasn't just Safari. iOS 17, iPadOS 17, macOS Sonoma all support JPEG XL. System applications like Files, Photos, Finder, and Preview all support it. The WebKit engine supports it. This is a really big deal. Also outlining the fact that a lot of CDN services were also very interested in JPEG XL, because for CDN services, if they can offer the same or higher quality images for less storage, that's just cost saving. They are just saving money by doing that. And come 2025, we have this.
This is all the technical stuff. The actual JPEG XL standard itself is this 18181. It's 4 parts, published in 2024. So that tells you also that it's relatively new. Now, although that's an ISO standard, it was actually developed in the JPEG community well before that. So in terms of PDF, I can't tell you what the answer is today, but I can tell you we will adopt JPEG XL as a new image format and have to consider all the implications to rendering.
This is the PDF Association. This is the people that define the PDF standard. And along with this, we also have Firefox, Mozilla, updating their stance on JPEG XL. So originally this was asked in May 7th, 2021, and down the bottom here we have the old version. Originally, we have a neutral stance on JPEG XL. There are two competing forces in play here that we need to acknowledge explicitly. Adding new formats comes with a cost, not just to us. Adding, securing, and maintaining code is non-trivial, but to the web as a whole. On the whole, having fewer formats for the web is better, as that limits the complexity of authoring and serving content. We support multiple formats only to the extent that those formats address the needs of people and sites. Overall, we don't see JPEG XL performing enough better than its closest competitors like AVIF to justify addition on that basis alone. Similarly, its feature advancements don't distinguish it enough above the collection of formats we already include in our platform, so we don't see the support for JPEG XL as either good or bad for the web. We might find it necessary to support the format if usage becomes more widespread, but that will be a product decision. Basically, because Google said we're not gonna do it, Firefox says there's obviously no reason to do it because there's not wide enough spread support, which makes sense, but it's not there because Google decided they wanted to try to kill the format. And in 2024, they changed their stance. Firefox will consider a Rust implementation of JPEG XL. Ooh, it's Rust! Over the past few months, we've had some productive conversations with the JPEG XL team at Google Research around the future of the format in Firefox. Our primary concern has long been the increased attack surface of the reference decoder, currently behind a pref in Firefox Nightly, which weighs in at more than 100,000 lines of multi-threaded C++. My understanding is a lot of that is actually test code, so this is kind of a disingenuous way of framing it, but it is what it is. To address this concern, the team at Google has agreed to apply their subject matter expertise to build a safe, performant, compact, and compatible JPEG XL decoder in Rust, and integrate this decoder into Firefox. If they successfully contribute an implementation that satisfies these properties and meets our normal production requirements, we would ship it. Well, if Google now, because they've decided to change their mind, does ship it, you don't have a choice, because if websites are shipping JPEG XL images, you either ship them or you be the one out of the 3 major browsers that is broken. So you actually don't get a choice anymore. So you're going to have to do it. Time will tell whether the format succeeds in becoming a universal JPEG replacement in the way some folks hope. In the event that it does, it would be unfortunate to potentially introduce memory safety vulnerabilities across the myriad of applications that would eventually need to support it. A safe, fast, and battle-tested Rust decoder from the original team could make that scenario much less likely, and so we're using our leverage? Our leverage. What leverage does Firefox have over Google? What leverage does Mozilla have over Chrome? Good luck with that one. So at this point, it was being implemented around Google, and they kind of needed to say something because everything else in the chain was saying, we're going to support JPEG XL. Why are you blocking this? And finally, that gets us to what happened a couple of days ago. Since JPEG XL was last evaluated, Safari has shipped support and Firefox has updated their position. Don't pretend like you care what Firefox's position is. We also continue to see developer signals for this in bug upvotes. Those were always there. Into our proposals and survey data. There was also a recent announcement that JPEG XL will be added to PDF. Given these positive signals, which were already there 4 years ago, we would welcome contributions to integrate a performant, memory-safe JPEG XL decoder in Chromium. In order to enable it by default in Chromium, we would need a commitment to long-term maintenance. With those and our usual launch criteria met, we would ship it in Chrome. And with that, a few days ago, somebody was assigned to the issue within the Chromium issue tracker. So, hopefully there's progress that is actually made here. There is a little bit being done with the integration of JXL into Chrome, so we'll see if this happens and we don't end up waiting another 5 years for Google to decide we just don't want to do it. Now, this person here, they're not being very productive in the thread. Please don't go and do this. If you want to say stupid shit, my comment section is a great place to do that, so keep that there. Don't go and just, threaten them with antitrust lawsuits in their bug tracker. That's dumb. You're dumb. This person is dumb. Again, do it in my comment section. At this stage, nothing has officially changed. We don't have support for this in the browser just yet. But hopefully it comes soon. And hopefully JPEG XL can become the standard image format going forward. After a 4-year side quest, waiting for it to be implemented. I didn't think it would ever happen, but now it seems possible. So, let me know your thoughts down below. Are you excited for JPEG XL? Do you care whatsoever? I'd love to know. So if you liked the video, go like the video. If you really liked the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, Scribes, Daily Bearer Pay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and I'll show you something XL.